ladies and gentlemen. As a child, our next speaker, Mary Lou Gutscher, was always asking questions, sometimes uncomfortable for adults to answer. Her curiosity has followed her through an adventurous life and into areas of study that most of her family and childhood friends haven't had the opportunity nor the desire to explore. She has taught, organized, and chaired Liberty and Entrepreneurship conferences in over a dozen countries, including former communist countries, Africa, and Central America. She recognizes that every idea and subsequently the actions taken those ideas has both seen and unseen consequences. Today, she explores the topic of the virtue of selfishness with reference both to Ayn Rand's books, that same title, to her own life experiences. Please join me to welcome Mary Lou Gutscher to the podium.
Thank you, Rajni. Yes, I have been fortunate in my life to have been born at a time when Ayn Rand was new and fresh. And so when I say it all begins with Ayn Rand, who in here agrees? Oops, today's me. Oh, come on, there are more of you. I know it. Okay, so for those of you who either are new to Ayn Rand or are thinking of becoming acquainted with Ayn Rand, I'm hoping that today will offer you some insights. So why the title, The Virtue of Selfishness? Well, first of all, it has a lot in common with what Giant chose to call this conference, Capitalism and Morality. So when I tell people proudly, oh, I go to the Capitalism and Morality conference every year, they say, is there a connection? So I've simply started adding something to that because there's no sense having a conversation on that, not when you're in the middle of something else, but, and now I just say, that's capitalism and morality, not capitalism or morality. The second reason is that the clarity of Ayn Rand's introduction to the book, actually. It was Rand who opened my mind to the possibility of a consistent philosophy. Having been raised a Christian, I always questioned how come the Sunday school teacher was teaching us one thing, but living another. I just couldn't figure that out, and why actually did people think you had to be a Christian in order to be a good person? But I had no concept that there was any other view. So if somebody said, oh, they didn't believe in God, it's like, really? Like, isn't that the only belief you can have? So reading Rand began to give me the basis for creating my own philosophy, my own belief system, which didn't require me to have someone else interpret for me what I should live, what rules I should live by. And Atlas Shrugged, first published in 1957, was the first book I read, and it was 1,197 pages of small print, having really not explored literature to much extent up to that time. And then published 7 years later, The Virtue of Selfishness gave some real sense to why Rand defined all her terms in everything that she wrote. And I'll quote you from there as an example of that. But it actually had a brilliant explanation of the underlying contradictions in societal beliefs, and an explanation of why most people, and in particular our religious and political leaders, can never walk their talk. If you have a philosophy, an economic theory full of contradictions, it's impossible to live according to your stated beliefs and intentions. So the best you can do is become a social engineer and try and make everyone else believe that you know best. Number 3 is, while admiring Rand for her rationalism, her philosophy of reason, we still live in a world with many others who don't see things our way. So I want to share with you a couple of ideas on what do we do in that instance. So let's start with quoting from Rand. referring first to why she chose the title, The Virtue of Selfishness. It is not a mere semantic issue, nor a matter of arbitrary choice. The meaning ascribed in common usage for the word selfishness is not merely wrong, it represents a devastating intellectual package deal, which is responsible more than any other single factor for the arrested moral development of mankind. So I think it's important to understand what she meant by package deal. And you'll find that throughout a lot of her philosophy, but in particular in this book, that she saw the perpetrator of this package deal as a belief in altruism. So I will be defining that term as we go along as well. Altruism preaches not just others before self, but others instead of self. And the package deal is that there are two moral questions involved. First of all, what are values? And secondly, who should be the beneficiary of values? So she goes on, in popular usage, the word selfishness is a synonym of evil. And yet the exact meaning and the dictionary definition of selfishness is concern with one's own interests. Excuse me. Now, here a lot of people, I'm involved in a business networking group, women's business networking group in Edmonton. And a lot of the women there, first of all, they have to focus on self-care because, of course, they're never taking care of themselves, they're taking care of other people. And yet, if you use the word selfishness and tell them that that's what self-care is about, they think that there's something screwy up here. And maybe there is, but you be the judge. So the concept does not include a moral evaluation. It does not tell us whether concern with one's own interest is good or evil, nor does it tell us what constitutes man's actual interests. Thank you, Jai. It is the task of ethics to answer such questions. And you notice the choice in words, even the difference between ethics and morality. So morality, in my mind, is referring to your choice of how you're going to live, what moral code you're going to choose. And ethics reflects more the concept of universally applicable laws of behavior. So here I refer to other related dictionary definitions. It's the list of synonyms that contain the apparent contradictions and that make it acceptable to use either meaning in communication, thus the need to define or be defined. So, altruism, the belief in or practice of disinterested and selfless concern for the well-being of others. Some may choose to, this is an example, some may choose to work with vulnerable elderly people out of altruism. But the synonyms, unselfishness, selflessness, self-sacrifice, self-denial, are what Rand refers to as the evil. Selflessness is concerned more with, this is a dictionary, concerned more with the needs and wishes of others than with one's own. And as I see it, there are times in life when that might be a valid thing to do, although I don't like the word. You might be paying something back, you might be paying something forward, and you might be actually setting yourself aside in that because you want to meet a prior or a former or future obligation. And then the example it gives is a noble act of selflessness. So I thought I'd look up noble. The pertinent definition is not nobility, but having or showing fine personal qualities or high moral principles and ideals. The promotion of human rights was a noble aspiration. I would just replace human rights with individual. But the synonyms, righteous, virtuous, good, honorable, honest, upright, upstanding, decent, worthy, uncorrupted, anti-corruption, moral, ethical, reputable, magnanimous, unselfish, self-sacrificing. So you can see that people actually could refer to a dictionary and they could use synonyms that go across the spectrum of what Rand defines as being ethical or not, or moral or not. So Rand's philosophy of objectivism is a philosophy of rational self-interest. And it goes further to define what is in man's best interest. And she refers us to her magnum opus, which is Atlas Shrugged, for edification. So back to quoting her in the Virtue of Selfishness. The reasons why man needs a moral code will tell you that the purpose of morality is to define man's proper values and interests, that concern with one's own interests is the essence of a moral existence, and that man must be the beneficiary of his own moral actions. The rest of the moral equation, which is probably the common denominator in this room, as most of us here have adopted as an unconditional part of our own individual moral codes, or likely have, is the negative right, the only thing not permissible in rational human relations, and that is the requirement to not interfere with the same right of others to their freedom of action. Thus, the question of property rights becomes of utmost importance in defining our terms. First, the right to ownership in our own bodies, and by extension, the right to ownership and management of justly acquired property. So, moving on from the book, which, to my mind, really changed my life. Reading Atlas Shrugged, first of all, made me realize I had a brain, and that it was important for me to use my own judgment. And that is actually what took me away from the church, from the Christian upbringing. It didn't make sense to me to raise my kids, my children, to believe that they had to trust the teacher or the minister who had communicated from some super being what the child should believe or know, thereby shutting down their mind. And it was actually an incident at school. My second son came home one day and he said, "Mom, I asked what makes leaves green." And the teacher said, "Because God made them that way." So I marched him down to the principal's office and I said, she can't help but have, show her beliefs, but she can't teach as if that's the only answer, because that child could ask many, many more whys before there was a reason to say, "I don't know." Anyway, the teacher came in and apologized and never did it again. So the rest of the story, though, in terms of Ayn Rand and her philosophy. And this is not to say that she wasn't brilliant. She was. She was a genius. And part of her unusual life was because she was a genius. And people thought of her as being godlike in that sense of that she had all the answers. But her associate, her young associate, Nathaniel Brandon, at some point they became lovers. And when he decided that loving or being a lover was not about being the perfect man and the perfect woman, in other words, it was not just a rational decision, that there was such an emotion as love, and he fell in love. So his disagreement with her philosophically, as well as his split with her more romantically, got him excommunicated from her inner circle. And if you pick up a current volume of the Virtue of Selfishness, which is in essence an anthology of articles and speeches of Ayn Rand and Nathaniel Brandon, it's the introduction that I was referring to here, you will see that she says in there that they are no longer associated. He decided to produce an audio tape, and I don't think a book, but definitely a lecture, on the benefits and hazards of Ayn Rand's philosophy. So part of any philosophy is to deal not only with the rational side of our nature, but the emotional side as well. And the emotional side was absent, totally absent in Rand's books, with the exception of possibly parents who loved children in the valley. Like, I don't know that there was another reference in there. Her pronouncements, including her views, were made as if emotions had no place in our lives. She justified her smoking habit by saying we should kiss the smokestacks because these represent the productivity of man's mind, until she developed lung cancer. She persuaded her husband and Nathaniel Brandon's wife to honor this extramarital relationship with them because it was the right thing to do. The perfect woman, the perfect man. And they all suffered psychologically for it. She broached no criticism, excommunicated members of her inner circle, her collective, at random. Well, appeared to be at random for those of us who followed it. And she was not recognized in the philosophy community because she would never submit her ideas for comment or for discussion. These things don't say she wasn't a genius, but they speak loudly to, first, the adoration that she garnered, and secondly, to the anti-emotional, rational side of her readers and followers, contributing to what was referred to as a group of Randroids. How many remember? I admit that for a number of years in my life, I wrote off people randomly or rapidly because they didn't seem to share my views. And it was my daughter who called me on it. She said, "So you're going to write off Mariana too? Like, you've been friends for like 17 years, and you're just because you think she disagrees on this one point, you're just going to write her off?" And I thought, well, okay, I guess magnanimity has to be part of my life from here on in. So there's kind of a mellowing of those of us who started off rather Randroidish. But this was a group of people full of repressed feelings and self-righteous indignation. Excuse me. I should say that a little bit more firmly, right? Self-righteous indignation, because that's what it felt like when we declared how brilliant we were. But here's the thing. Life is not semantics. So there were a number of people who, even though they also changed their lives or found that Rand's philosophy was life-changing, there are several of them in this room, they already had enough confidence in their own views to recognize where their theories intersected, and that it wasn't about following the word of Ayn Rand, but recognizing that there was common ground. And even now, as people are, more newly discovering Ayn Rand, some are just saying, this is just a load of trash, and others are falling into the same syndrome of feeling inadequate because they can't be perfect. So guess what? Nobody's perfect. They never will be perfect. Ayn Rand wasn't perfect. So my bit of advice to you is do what you love to do with people you love to do it with. Do it well. And if you want to call it selfish, fine, but you're going to have to do a lot of explanation. Thank you.
Hi, Mary Lou.
Hi, Sean.
So as someone who understands Ayn Rand and objectivism, some parts better than others, could you clarify for me? So I understand when you spoke about the pastor or how that doesn't correlate with reason and rationality and understanding, thinking objectively. Is there any way to be an objectivist or to be in line with what Ayn Rand spoke on and thought on, and also have belief in a higher power or God, or irrespective of the religion?
So the question was to follow Ayn Rand's philosophy and believe, and the answer is no. But to follow a decent life and live one that is virtuous in your view, and still live within this basic common ground that we have as libertarians about non-coercion, absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.